welcome. Welcome to our webinar on unlocking innovation and how to empower a neurodiverse workforce. We're really excited to have three fabulous guest speakers here today on our panel who will talk about their experiences in working with a neurodiverse talent. And also we will hear today from our fantastic Audicon team. Now, for those who are not familiar with Audicon, we're an international IT services provider and a social enterprise that exclusively employs autistic adults in permanent contracts as IT consultants. The Australian office officially launched in November 2019, and then our consultants started on the first project with a client in March 2020. So we're well on our way to achieve having 30 consultants by the end of this year. At the moment we have 17, and we're really excited to be launching into New Zealand this year as well. Now, before we start with our panel discussion, we will hear from our senior Audicon team. First up, we hear from our CEO, Bodo Mann, who will give us an overview of what is to be gained from hiring neurodiverse talent. Then we will hear from our fabulous senior job coach on what building a neurodiverse working environment looks like. And this is then followed on by our senior tech lead, Aidan, who will be speaking on how Audicon's technical support assists businesses achieve and exceed their project goals, and how innovation and different ways of thinking solves complex problems and benefits businesses. Now, if you have any questions, please put them in the chat box and we will answer them later in our session. So now, let's hear from our CEO and Managing Director, Bodo Mann, on what is to be gained from hiring neurodiverse talent. Bodo, over to you. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Yvonne. Much appreciated. Thank you all who tuned in. It's much appreciated, and we're glad we can discuss that. So we really rely on your support, and that's wonderful. So I thought about the question, and I would say if I look at our clients, and this is reflected all around the world. As you know, we're in 8 countries. Australia is the last edition. We started about 3 years ago in Australia. They fall into two buckets, if you want to, in terms of what the motivation is, as well as the benefits, which are aligned. So on the one side, the one bucket, you have this global trend for ESG, so environmental, social, and governance type of drivers and motivation to invest in that space. We are fair and square in the S in terms of the social investment there. And really the underlying motivation for any corporate to invest in an ESG space is really to gain additional employee as well as like customer satisfaction or buy-in. And luckily, over the last few years, this has become more and more important. And we see that in any single conversation we have, be that with the technology team, the CIO, be that with the HR team, the D&I team, be that with boards. We get a lot of introductions and conversation with board members, as well as the CEO. So really top down, right down throughout the organization. And if you look at the stats in terms of driving social change and social improvement, if you look at the stats in terms of the unemployment rate for people on the spectrum is with 34%. So it's a huge number. If you look at the underemployment rate, which is even more scary, it's like close to 90%. So you have some highly skilled, some very intelligent individuals who are operating, if they do have a job, way below their capacity and their capability. It's a tragedy, right? Not just for the individual, but also for us as a society, and certainly in a corporate world. So that's the one bucket in terms of ESG and the more ethical and moral drive to do something better and make this whole world and the economy a better place, obviously driven by customers as well as employees. The other bucket is equally important. If you look at the motivation, that's more of a commercial drive. There are not a lot of good side effects in terms of what the pandemic brought. I mean, I can think of 2, right? I mean, one is obviously we can work remotely, and it's broadly accepted that you can add value. And the other one is that we can pop up, or we popped up on the radar screen as an alternative source for talent, because that's very scary and severe drought on talent. So if you want to drive innovation, if you want to drive productivity, you need to have a diverse team in order to look at problems in a different way, take complexity away and put it back in together. By definition, autistic talent have a different way of thinking as us neurotypical employees or people. So it is a very healthy and a natural way of introducing some really innovative and a new way of thinking. So that's one. If you look at the stats as well, there are very selected empirical evidence and studies around the world. But let me just share one. JP Morgan Chase has a global neurodiversity program, and in 2020 they published a paper where they talked about, they did a comparison between neurotypical staff and neurodiverse staff. And their findings is that 48% that the neurodiverse staff is about 48% faster in terms of their delivery and go about particular activities. And the productivity is even higher. It's like in the 90s. And that is really driven by a different way of thinking, the ability to focus and concentrate over a prolonged period of time on a particular task. And so therefore, bringing it back to what the motivation are, there's a commercial drive, there's a tangible benefit by employing neurodiverse staff. And particular if you make sure that you have the right support network designed around it, which is effectively what we do. And so we de facto are like the outsourced provider for a neurodiverse employment strategy. And with the methodology we talk about a little bit more in detail, we can ensure basically over a long period of time, like a defined outcome and a superior output with the approach we take. So again, the ESG is one motivation with lots of benefit attached, and secondly, it's basically a very commercial logic and rationale. With that, I hand over.
Thank you, Bodo. Yeah, there's certainly some very interesting stats there. You know, unemployment rate is 34%, and then talked about the underemployment rate of 90%. Really shows there's a lot of untapped talent out there that we need to harness. Thank you for that insight, Bodo. I will now hand over to Meredith, our senior jobs coach, to inspire us on what building a neurodiverse working environment looks like. Thank you, Meredith.
Great,
over to you.
Thanks, Yvonne. Yes, we're going to look at what a neurodiverse working environment looks like. Thanks, John. You can go to the next slide. So this isn't an exhaustive list by any means. It's just a couple of elements that I thought I would share with you today, and I'm not going to go through each one of them. Obviously, one of the most important things is to have an inclusive mindset, which obviously all of you have because you're here learning more today from us. But it's thinking about really exploring different ways of working and being flexible in the way that you approach work and embracing difference. As Stephen Shaw said, you know, if you've met one person on the spectrum, you've met one person on the spectrum. It's remembering that mostly best practice approaches support all employees, so we're not suggesting by any means that there is a parallel workforce or a parallel workplace practices that we're trying to build. The things that work for people on the spectrum also work for most of employees. It's important to remember that the things that our practices and building the right environment actually allows our consultants to be themselves. We don't want our consultants to be having to be masking all day long or holding it together and then, you know, going home and falling apart. So that's really important to remember that we really want our consultants to thrive because, you know, because of who they are. We have an unconventional recruitment process. It's a skills-based process. It's comprehensive, so we just don't rely on one element when we're looking through, when we're going through our recruitment process. And of course, understanding autism. I've deliberately made this the last point on the list because this is an ongoing element. It's a journey, a lifelong journey of learning and understanding autism. Okay, thanks, John. Next slide. Our 360-degree support model helps to build the right environment and the right workplace. We have autism-friendly workplace practices, so things like workplace adjustment. So that could be something like the environment. When a consultant goes on site, we have one of our coaches go with them, and we explore the environment and we ask questions of the consultant, and the consultant is able to consider, what is the right environment for them? Do they need to be sitting near a window? Do they like people walking behind them or not? So it may be important to, for instance, place them in a particular area of the office, somewhere where it's quiet perhaps, and exploring places where they can possibly go for, some quiet time should they require it. Everyone has a communication style. It's all, it's different. And so it's understanding that people do have different communication styles. Our consultants may perhaps be more literal than yourself, or they may be more direct or a very efficient communicator, which means that they may not have an abundance to say, but what they do say is extremely important. We obviously have a holistic approach, and maintaining good mental health for all of our consultants and colleagues is extremely important, and we ensure that we do our best to make sure that, things like stress and anxiety are considered for the consultants. In terms of support mechanisms, there's obviously sessions with the job coaches for our consultants, and these could be anything from perhaps discussing what's going on in the workplace, any challenges. It may also be looking at personal development and things like learning more about interoception or emotion regulation. It's individualised for each consultant, and so therefore it's not a cookie cutter approach. It's very personalised. We have mentorship from our technical lead, and Aidan will talk a little bit about this next, but also we have our consultants mentor one another, so we really value the knowledge and the ability of each of our consultants to share with one another. And we also provide client support, so our job coaches are also a client liaison, and this is where we provide learning and training around understanding autism for our clients, and also supporting them on a day-to-day basis. And that's it from me, so I'll hand back to you, Yvonne.
Hey, well, thank you, Meredith. There's certainly a lot for a takeaway for us, just to embrace an inclusive mindset, embrace difference. And what I really like about it is be yourself, don't mask. And we can all adopt that in the workplace. It's just, really good practice that applies to all of us, not just to neurodiverse people. Thank you, Meredith. So now I will hand over to Aidan. Aidan is our senior tech lead, and Aidan will talk to us about how Audicon's technical support assists businesses achieve and exceed their project goals, and also how innovation and different ways of thinking solve complex problems and also benefit businesses. So thank you.
Have we lost Yvonne?
Have we lost Yvonne?
Oh no, everything's going to fall apart. We've lost our Master of Ceremonies. What do we do?
We'll throw to you, Aidan. You're next.
Yes, hello everyone. I'm Aidan. I'm the Senior Tech Lead in Australia. I'm actually based in the UK. I still work with the Australian office, so I'm up at 4 every day and to work with the Australian team in delivering our projects. Currently, I work with our anchor client Woolworths in delivering projects across that organisation. We also have several other projects with different clients and different project managers, and that's handled differently depending on how the needs present themselves. One of the things that we've been working on is a robot which can essentially automate a lot of the a lot of the manual testing for their point of sale systems, and that was an opportunity that presented to ourselves on day one of working with this client. It's been very successful so far. It's been talked about quite a lot. Everyone's very excited about a bot. So that's just one of the projects that we're working on at the moment. The way we structure things internally is, myself as the tech lead, I have 4 different streams of focus across all our deliverables. So across our pillars of delivery. So we have data analytics, software engineering, quality assurance, and cybersecurity. And so internally we have these groups. We come together every week and we discuss different problem sets and try to explore different solutions. There's a lot of cross-pollination of talent there, and it's really a good way to support each other. This is just a general standard practice, of course, but it's been very fruitful. We also spend a lot of time engaging the client on different technical requirements, depending on the seniority of the consultant. We encourage consultants to come up through that stage and to make sure that they're all across different skill sets within being a consultant. Obviously, Auticon is a less than traditional consultancy, and so we spend a lot of time focusing on enhancing a lot of those traditional skill sets. We have programmers who come to us that are really advanced in semi-obscure languages or newer languages like Kotlin or a particular Java framework, for example, but they might not have experience in deployment. So we focus on making sure that their skill sets are specialized and they retain that speciality and they retain that heightened focus on whatever they're really passionate about technically. We also make sure that they have a well-rounded skill set so that in any given situation they can contribute to the team with some more of those, I guess I'd say, complementary skills, things like AWS, DevOps, that kind of thing. To the streams as well, so I delegate to the streams. They basically formulate these kind of communities of practice, these special interest groups to focus on developing people in training, and people, obviously, they splinter off to deal with different particular problems. That's really what my role is. I might speak about my personal impact that Auticon has had on me. Prior to working with Auticon, I had a very checkered past. I had issues with substance abuse, and every job I had worked at, I had been fired from, essentially. I was working as a contractor in entertainment for a long time, and I never got a call back. It was always a constant hunt for the next client, so to speak, from job to job, which I suppose speaks to my ability as sort of a sole trader and as a personal salesperson. I was able to do that for so long, but it was obviously exhausting. And it wasn't until about a year before I discovered Auticon that I realized I was autistic and then needed that support. Working at Auticon, I've gone from I had just started a software engineering degree at the same time, and I've gone from basically what you would call an enthusiast junior to a senior IT consultant. I've since moved out of programming as a focus. I'm now more project management focus and technical support focus. But I have enough knowledge that I've acquired in my own time and through my own experiences that I'm able to support clients. That's sort of the depth that I went to. It's had a profound impact upon my life. I'm now financially stable. I now can pursue other interests that I've always wanted to pursue. I moved to the UK. That was very expensive, as you can imagine. And so I've been able to do all of those things and sustain employment, grow as a person and grow as a leader as well, which is very important to me. So I can't overstate the impact. It's utterly profound. So
Thank you very much.
Impact of on.
Yeah, fantastic. Fantastic. Thank you so much for giving us your personal story as well. Thank you. That's really important, and that's what we at Audicon are all about. So now we're going to move on to our panel, and let me introduce you to our fabulous panelists. So they're all current clients of Audicon. Some of them work very closely with our consultants, and they're now going to talk about their experience on how it is working with our consultants and working with Audicon. First of all, we have Courtney Pond, who is the Group Inclusion and Diversity Manager at the NRMA. Courtney is passionate about supporting organizations to create psychologically safe and inclusive workplaces through the adoption of human-centered approaches to people and well-being practices. She works in both HR and work health and safety roles, and that has equipped her with a unique skill set to create and drive comprehensive and holistic frameworks for people engagement. Welcome, Courtney. Thank you for taking the time to be here today.
Oh, thanks for inviting me along.
Thank you. And then we also have Chris Liebert, who is the Commercial Manager, Enterprise Public Sector at Microsoft. So Chris is a highly skilled sales professional. He speaks 5 languages, which has allowed him to communicate with different people working across many countries. So Chris is a people manager at heart. He enjoys leading a diverse team and watching his team grow and succeed. Welcome, Chris, and also thank you very much for your time.
You're welcome. Hello, everybody.
Hi. So now we're really looking forward to hear from you. And I would like to start by asking you, Chris, what was your motivation to engage Audicon in the first place?
So, thank you, Yvonne. My story is that while we were still living in the UK, we made an expensive move going the other way, Aidan. It was very expensive then. We actually fostered an autistic child on a respite basis. So we had Josh, our foster child, live with us every 4th weekend for a weekend. And we got to really understand a lot about autism. And I sort of got to thinking, knowing him and building a relationship, that there are a lot of things that he could do a lot faster and a lot more accurate than I could. For a long time after I arrived in Australia, managing a team of commercial contract negotiators, but also managing a couple of contract administrators, I thought actually someone who's neurodiverse could do the contract administration job just as well, if not better, than a non-neurodiverse person. So for a number of years, I've been looking for the opportunity. And then I think through a meeting between Bodo and my manager, a guy called Mark Lee, who heads up public sector for Microsoft in Australia, I ended up connecting with Audicon and ended up very successfully hiring 2 consultants who are working very hard at the moment through a very large deal. And it's a great test, actually, but the results have been very, very interesting to observe.
Thank you, Chris. Thank you for that. That's really inspiring. You know, that you already had the experience, and then you really felt like you wanted to do some more. Thank you so much. Now we also have Con just joining us. So Con is also part of the panel. Con is a senior manager in data and analytics at NRMA. Con is passionate about data and its ability to optimize all marketing and business activities. So Con has many years of experience in leading, educating, challenging and partnering with diverse business units and vendors to deliver the right customer outcomes. And this has allowed Con to lead and pioneer diverse analytics teams in many varied and challenging market environments. So thank you, Con, also for joining us today on the panel.
Thank you. Good to be here.
Thank you. And Con, I will. I'm going to ask Chris, and then I move over to you, Con. Chris, just following on from your motivation to engage Audicon, you said that you found Audicon and you spoke with your manager about the idea to engage us. Now, was there any initial hesitation within the business and also the immediate team to engage with us, despite the support that Audicon provides?
Look, in all honesty, no. We in Microsoft, like a lot of tech and a lot of companies generally, do engender a diversity approach. And in fact, in tech particularly, there's a lot of focus on gender diversity in particular, and then obviously racial diversity. We talk about accessibility, but it's not one of the mainstream subjects, to be really transparent. And so I felt that this would be a great opportunity. So from my manager's perspective, there was no resistance. It's basically opened the door for me. I am very lucky that I have a very loyal team, and we get on really, really well. And I think to some extent they knew that I had an interest in this. I'd mentioned it before over the years, and probably just thought, well, if Chris thinks it's a good idea, then let's see what happens. So nobody actually said, wow, that's a really bad idea, right? Are you sure you know what you're doing? So it was a very accepting environment. And then the coaching makes the difference. So I did actually have an opportunity a few years ago, but it fell away while I was abroad, to hire someone that was neurodiverse. I have to admit, had I gone out alone without the support of a company like Audicon, I think it would have potentially been a disaster. So when I learned about what the service that you wrap around the consultants, I thought this will work, right? So that's the key.
And it is working.
It is working at the moment. I'm really testing it because the two consultants are super busy, and it's it's actually quite a stressful environment, which you have to acknowledge. And to be honest, no matter what state a human being is, if you're in a stressful environment, you need to look after them anyway. But we just have to recognize there are certain things that I'm more sensitive to with my consultants than I might be with a non-neurodiverse person. But with a non-neurodiverse person, there'll be other areas that I'm more sensitive to.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe I can just add to that. It's just thanks very much for that. And I think it's not to underestimate how important it is to have a dedicated and a passionate champion in the business. And certainly, Chris, you playing that role, and Con, you playing that role, or Courtney in the NRMA. So you all have that in common. But if I compare successful assignments and partnerships with maybe less successful ones, the differentiator is really like the genuine passion of the champion. Because the program will inevitably go through ups and downs, right? We will face challenges. That's just in the nature of the mission we were pursuing, and it makes a difference to have a strong champion there. Because typically the senior execs or the board is on board; they love it, fantastic. But the pudding is in the proof. The pudding is in the detail, really, right? And so we need those champions. So on this note, thank you so much to all of you there.
You're welcome.
Now, Con, I would like to ask you a question. You have now been working with two of our consultants on the project. And Con, so have you experienced any challenges during the project? Were there any challenges that you faced? And I mean, have overcome, and how did you overcome them?
Look, we were looking for specialised skills. We were, I guess, the initial project we were working on was we were migrating from an old data environment to a new cloud base. So we're going from an Oracle on-premise to GCP. And we were moving all our infrastructure, our code and our tables across. And we wanted somebody that had that high level of test and understanding and could get into the detail to make sure that we could, everything that we were taking across was exactly what it was in the old world is now in the new world. So we thought this would be a wonderful project to bring an analyst of Audicon when we were thinking about what resources we would get to support us. We had by chance the conversation, and we thought it would be ideal for an Audicon person to come in, and they proved themselves. They came in and adapted well. The training we got helped. So no real challenges because we knew what we were getting into. We had somebody that had a high regard to the work we were doing, and they just fitted in well. They worked with two teams on two different sides of the business. So we had an initial one with our campaign team and then moved into the BI team, the business intelligence team. And in both cases, they handled themselves well. So that was the first engagement. So no real issues, fitted in, picked up our systems very quickly, partnered with the team and became part of the team. You know, we would break on Fridays to have our quizzes, and you know, the analyst James just participated in those sessions, so he felt comfortable enough coming in and playing with the team and engaging with the team, which was really nice. And the more recent one, we had another analyst by the name of Connor. It was a shorter stint, very specific, but he had a task to do, and again delivered on that task. And that was to translate a script that we had from Oracle in the old ways into the new environment, and do some testing and documenting of that process, and again accomplished it within the time frame that we had allocated. So, and again, another good outcome for the business. So for us, no issues. I guess we were specific with what we were asking, and I think the secret is making sure that the details are there, and that there's somebody making sure that there is understanding. And if you've got that combination right, both those projects worked well.
Yes, thank you. And Con, were there any unexpected outcomes from your engagement, or any impact on the people within your organization?
Oh no, I think it was positives because we had people. The team got a lot out of it, engaging with and feeling that they're doing something positive as well. And then I heard from conversations after that we as well made a positive impact to the analyst's life. So I think I describe it as a win-win. It's great for us and the team feeling that we're doing something worthwhile and in partnering with these resources to support, and which is terrific. So, yeah.
Oh, thank you. And so, Chris, what about for you? Were there any unexpected outcomes from the engagement, or did you see any impact it might have for people in the organization? Because I would think that for a lot of your colleagues would have been the first time interacting with someone on the spectrum.
Yes, it's there were some interesting ones, and I'm smiling because I sort of go back to probably month 2. So I have 2 consultants, and they're quite different. And one of them in particular is the spectrum isn't the spectrum, it's actually a spider's web, and you're on a particular position. But with this particular consultant, it's quite obvious that he's on the spectrum. And he was having a one-to-one with one of his commercial execs who works for me, and he starts the meeting and he says, "I'm bored," because he literally raced through everything, 100% accuracy, which was generating some complex price models, etc., and had done exactly what I thought might happen, which is actually go through it faster and more accurate than a non-neurodiverse people. And I've hired non-neurodiverse people in this role for years. So that was quite an amusing one. And the commercial executive didn't quite know how to handle that. And I said, well, it's great, but what'll happen now is it opens us up to giving him more things that interest him, that challenge him, that he will naturally gravitate towards. Right? But the one thing that I would urge caution is the worst thing you can do with someone who's neurodiverse is overload them with a whole bunch of random stuff. And so there has to be a process within which, almost like a comfort blanket, someone who's neurodiverse can work well in. And when you create that, and again, the coaching that we were getting from Audicon really helped as well. When you create that safety environment for that person, the actual productivity and output you get will be remarkably higher. But if you bombard them randomly, then you're taking a risk. And you know, the other thing that you have to be very wary of, particularly in a sales environment and a very fast-paced environment, that you don't want to stress anybody out. And so we do have quite measured approaches to it. Yeah, our workload is up and down, and at the moment it's very up. So at the moment I'm going through a real test, but it's great because they're definitely keeping cool and doing things in the best possible manner that they can with my team. And really with my team, they have had to adjust somewhat in their communication styles, but it's a minimal thing. So it's actually opened their eyes, which is really important. I think what you were referring to, Yvonne.
Fantastic. And I think the takeaway here is also that I find it refreshing, that direct communication. So there's no beating around the bush, how we call it.
That's right.
Just say, I'm bored, or, you know, and then all you need to do is find a solution for this. It's just, you know, direct communication. It is what it is.
That's right.
And I think that's, you know, that also means that, you know, meetings can be very productive and very, very effective and quickly done.
Yeah.
Thank you. Now, Courtney, I would like to ask you, what has been the feedback or the acceptance amongst the business and the immediate team, you know, of the engagement with Audicon? Because I know you sit on, you know, more on the corporate level. You spread your wings across a few more areas. So I would like to know, you know, what has been the acceptance at that level amongst the business?
Yeah, I think collectively the business is really excited about our partnership with Audicon. I think at the heart of us as an organisation is the value that we're passionate too about representing the communities that we live and work with. So we really see the partnership with Audicon as very true to that value, you know, and I think like Bodo touched on, you can't go past the part either that it's a great commercial decision. There are incredibly talented, gifted people out in the community who we previously haven't engaged with, and Audicon gives us that ability to do that. And so I think great talent is great for business, and we know that. But I think also too, you know, it goes to the core of us as an organisation in terms of having an inclusive organisation and having one that's representative of our communities. So there's a genuine excitement and a genuine commitment to continuing the partnership with Audicon across the group and all of our business units.
Thank you. No, and thank you so much for your support, Courtney. Thank you. Aidan, I just wanted to ask you, can you tell us about how your experience is with the consultants? Because you work with them very closely on you know, the project, a certain project. How did your experience with our consultants and the project team, like the influence of bringing innovation into organizations?
Yvonne, can I just, before Aidan answers, Matthew,
yes,
the question as well. So Chris was just kind enough to type in an answer, but you might want to pick that up as well after Aidan answers. I'm happy to pick that.
Yeah, we do the questions after.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
Sure. So, I mean, engaging with the different consultants, you know, as has already been alluded, that they're all very individual. Each has their own special way of communicating. Some will pick up on things that might be obvious to a non-neurodiverse person. Other people will need extreme specificity. Some need things repeated, and also that sort of leads into the types of mentorship as well, because a lot of the consultants for the Australian office, I'd say about 60% are quite young. There are lots at graduate level, and so that presents a unique challenge for a tech lead in that I have to be very careful about what I say internally. We all have to be very careful at work, obviously. But I think the conversation that Chris had with one of the consultants, I think that was actually a result of a conversation I had with that consultant. And it was just something that I'd said off the cuff. I said, I think I said something like, I think you might be bored, or I think you're underutilized. You probably could be doing something a bit more advanced, or something like that. Not thinking that it would go straight to the client and say that. So,
but it worked.
We had it worked, and we're lucky enough that it was good, and we're lucky enough that we're in that context. That kind of thing is accepted, and that's great. But we did have to go back and have a conversation. Okay, so guys, the things that we're talking about here are not to be repeated. We have to. So a lot of those things they're very positive though, because they're provide me with an insight as well to things that I wouldn't have learned otherwise in a social situation. I'm a bit of a different case in that I have been, I suppose, neurotypical-fied, as you wouldn't. A lot of people say, "Oh, you're autistic." I would never have noticed, which is a questionable thing to compliment someone for. But it shows that whilst this consultant is very specific, it's very obvious that they present as autistic. For me, I've spent a lot of years working towards learning different communication, different styles of communication, understanding how to sort of act as a translator almost between the two worlds. And so that has been really interesting. From a technical point of view as well, sometimes we investigate different interests with people, and it comes down to finding what really makes them tick. And I was speaking before about finding up, getting them to a well-rounded skill set. Well, some of them, not all of them, are interested in doing that, right? They do need to do it. They do understand the value in doing it. So it's about understanding, okay, really, what is going to make you want to advance in that way, and that's been really interesting, because it can come down to the most granular, tiny little aspect of something, and then all of a sudden, sort of everything gives way, and all this interest and all this information starts to be absorbed. I think that's a really important thing to identify is. Don't just go in with a shotgun approach. Sort of really try and identify surgically what's going on, and then you'll find that little kernel of truth, and then all of a sudden everything will fall into place.
Thank you, Aidan. Thank you. And I've got a final question to the panel. What would you say to HR managers who are looking to increase their STEM talent pool or enhance their organization's innovation program in IT? So if they really want to bring more innovation in, they want to bring more diversity of thinking, what would you say to those HR managers, Chris?
I think the role has to fit the type of consultant. So for example, I'm leading a bunch of sales negotiators. I don't think that would immediately spring to mind as being a role that I would necessarily put someone who's neurodiverse into. But I think in the way I answered it, a role that has a level of detail, some complexity, but has a process behind it that creates this safety net I referred to earlier. That's the sort of thing that you should be looking at. So the role, first of all, drives the need. When you found that, then again, it's definitely worth, and this isn't an advertisement, but we are with Auticon here, but there are other companies as well that do this. Definitely pick up with an expert like Auticon, so that you set yourself and your teams up for success. It is easy to fail in this, and as I said earlier, I could have gone it alone a few years ago, and I'm really glad I didn't. And even though I do understand a bit about neurodiversity, there is no way that I could do that job, and there's no way I could get the background and support and the upfront coaching, because before the assignment starts, my team was coached as well. So there's a lot more facets than just saying, I've got a STEM diversity need, I'll tick the box and I'll put someone who's neurodiverse in a role. I think if that's the case, that's the wrong thing to do.
Thank you, Chris. Yeah, I agree.
Con or Courtney, did you want to add something from the NRMA perspective?
I can talk, I guess, more from a general HR perspective.
Yes.
I would say from a HR perspective, it's about particularly now starting to think more boldly and differently about how we find great talent and being open to that. And I think absolutely what Chris talked to, finding experts such as yourself who can really guide that journey. I think, you know, the insights and the support that Auticon has provided to all of us on this journey has been valuable. And, you know, I think we're not subject matter experts in this space, so having the guidance of yourselves has only enhanced, I would hope, the experience for the consultant, but also for our employees as well. So I think there's a lot to be learned from all sides, and it's incredibly worthwhile.
Yeah. Thank you, Courtney. And we do. Yes, Con.
Just quickly, I just wanted to say, without
please.
I couldn't have gone alone in this journey. I think for me, we've got a strong, I guess, diversity, equity and inclusion sort of understanding within the business and a drive within the business. So
yes.
You know, when I first brought up, hey, there's an opportunity, I'm looking for resources, would we consider, you know, bringing somebody that's an external vendor in and having to go through all the obstacles like procurement and getting buy-in and so on is quite a difficult process. But I was lucky that I had support across the business from HR, obviously from Courtney and from our senior business leaders that just made us able to get it over the line. So, you know, we've now got a contract in place, so not only can my team enjoy the resources that Auticon can provide, it's company-wide, so everyone else get in, and that's been a real big win for the business.
Yeah, thank you, Con. And I think there is a question here in our chat, and I think that's it answers in part the question that is posed here by Matthew Ferguson. And the question is, how do we as an organization get started hiring neurodiverse people? We always recommend, not just if you've never dealt with neurodiverse people before, if you've never hired someone on the spectrum, we always recommend to start with us first. Because we provide you with the support, we provide you an autism awareness training, so you really understand what it's about. We give you very detailed briefs on the consultants, on, you know, what they might struggle with, what they like, what they excel in. So you can tailor the workload towards their strengths. And then ideally, you know, we work ourselves out of a job. So, you know, in a year or in 2 years, you might be able to say, look, we can actually do that on our own now. But yeah, we don't recommend to do it on your own right from the start. There's another question here. Let me just have a look. Okay. Hi, what about people who are borderline or on the spectrum but not clinically declared to be neurodiverse? Would they be considered in this program? So because we're all about hiring neurodiverse talent, our consultants have a formal diagnosis. So they have to have a formal diagnosis to be considered for an employment with Auticon. Because that's what we are about, and that's what we promote. Yes, Bodo?
That. So within 6 months. So
yes.
We have a probation period, and then within 6 months, we strongly encourage to get a diagnosis. But in any case, I would encourage you just talk to us, and we just we'll find a solution either way. But it's right. Our mission and our policy is that certainly beyond 6 months after the probation period, we do need to have a diagnosis.
And here's another question, so I will pose that to Meredith. Do neurodiverse candidates feel about being considered as a separate or specialist group Do they feel that recognition is important, or do they feel it's feeling weird to have neurodiverse as their primary identifier? I think Meredith, you're the best person to answer that question.
Yeah, myself and Aidan might like to speak to this as well, but certainly in terms of, I mean, our consultants are part of the team of the client, so they're not considered separate. They don't necessarily sit as part of a specialised team. This is different to perhaps how other programs and organisations might do it, but apart from the direct team lead and their mentor, it's not necessarily known that a person is on the spectrum. Yes, they're an Auticon consultant, but we do talk to our prospective candidates about how they feel about their diagnosis and how their journey has been, and are they okay with that being known. But we don't advocate necessarily that client, our clients are walking around saying, hey, this is, John, he's on the spectrum. It's very much our consultants are part of the client team. They work side by side with other members of the team. There's no special identifier. There's apart from their brilliant work. But Aidan, do you have something extra to add to that?
Yeah, absolutely. It's an interesting question. There's often conversation in the zeitgeist about this topic and identity first language and all that kind of thing. Most of the autistic community prefer identity first, so autistic people, rather than person first, which different disabled communities identify that way. So person with a wheelchair, that kind of thing. And we tend to avoid using sort of, even though autism is the diagnosis, sort of talking about it in a way that infers a kind of disease or condition. So that is important. As in terms of being considered separate or specialist group, a lot of people do have that discussion, and there's certain topics about, okay, well, is it sort of is it okay to sort of posit us as sort of the Rain Man figure, that the only reason you would engage us is there's this commercial advantage. I don't tend to agree. I think that where the world is at the moment, we need the buy-in, we need the understanding for people, and that's how they engage with it. I don't think there's a problem with that at all. And it is true, we do add a certain advantage, and I personally enjoy being separate. There's a certain, perhaps arguably a little bit of arrogance there, but I do enjoy being special. I do enjoy being the person that I am, because I have certain gifts that are self-evident. I try not to be arrogant about it, but it is there. Certain people have different feelings about that. So it really is different for people.
Let me maybe try to answer that slightly different as well. So we certainly celebrate it as a unique skill set, as something special, and all our clients are recognizing that. And we as a company are on a mission to drive a paradigm shift, not just in the corporate world, but in society. And we do encourage our consultants to embrace it and be proud about it. And that is a journey I think you go through as an individual. And Aidan, you can probably attest to that. But
Absolutely.
The reason why we are so successful and why we're growing is because we do get that acceptance, and companies as well as society are buying into that and understand that we have something profoundly unique and special to offer, with a value attached, not just like a social and a moral deliverable. And I personally, I think Australia came a long way in terms of diversity and inclusion in the gender space, or LGBTIQ, and I think neurodiversity is the next frontier. And if you look at it like on Netflix, for example, when you have Love on the Spectrum, which is like a very popular, not just in Australia, but internationally, series, it becomes more mainstream, neurodiversity. And I think that's great for us and for our mission. And so it's a matter of embracing it and using it to your advantage, right? Because it offers new opportunities, a better life, for our consultants, and growth.
Yep, exactly.
Maybe one thing I'll add as well, sorry, just to that question. If you're thinking
Yes.
that you have to engage with it in a very specific or particular way, I wouldn't worry about it too much. Just embracing it, however that happens, is still very positive. It doesn't need to be walking on eggshells or some kind of perfectly curated engagement. It's just have it be a positive experience.
Okay, well, there's no further questions. Then this concludes our webinar. Thank you everyone for participating. Thank you to our panelists and thank you to my colleagues. Fantastic. Thank you everyone, and I wish you a great afternoon.